Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarush Khan and today we're going to talk about the verb tenses to express future time. When we talk about the future or the future time, the first thing that comes to our mind is basically the will plus verb structure, but the irony with this structure is that it is rarely used. The more commonly used structures are the be going to structure or the present progressive structures that we use for future actions. There are other two tenses that are used for future. The first one is basically the future perfect tense, and the second is the future perfect progressive tense. Learners need to know about these structures and their rules and their uses, but they have to figure it out what structures are critical to them and their language needs. So before moving forward, I would like to add that the upcoming examples that you will be watching on this video are designed keeping in mind a specific audience. The students that I have kept in mind are the first year English compulsory students of International Relations Department. Although the examples are easily understandable by people around Pakistan or specifically in Karachi, because they're targeting specifically Karachi. Alright, so the first structure on our list is basically the be going to structure, and be going to is mainly used to talk about plans and intentions, and the other thing it is used for is to make predictions based on present evidence. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is that it is most commonly used in conversational English. Alright, so coming towards plans and intentions, these are basically the things that we intend to do. When we're talking about plans and intentions, usually the decisions are made before the actual action takes place. For example, Fahad is going to pick up Ali from his house. Before the action takes place, both the friends have decided that, alright Fahad, you will come at my place and you will pick me up, and Fahad is like, okay fine, I will come and pick you up. Both are mutually sort of like in on this action. They agree to it. That's why the action is taking place. And the other thing is basically the predictions. The predictions are evidence based and looking at the present conditions. So we use be going to when we see something that is likely to happen. For example, look at those clouds. It is going to rain. It's basically there is something that is happening in the present. You're looking at the clouds are in front of you, and you see that it's going to pour. Now coming towards the culturally relevant examples that I have carved, specifically keeping in mind the students, the audience that I've already mentioned in the first slide. The first example is basically, in an hour, the head of department is going to deliver a speech on upcoming opportunities in the United Nations for undergraduate students. So here basically there was a decision that was made that the HOD is going to be giving a speech in the department for the upcoming opportunities in the UN. Alright, so the other example is basically the University of Karachi is going to arrange transportation services for underprivileged students as per the orders of VC. Obviously, there is a connection between orders and decisions. So again, this falls perfectly under the be going to structure form. Alright, so talking about simple future, the simple future refers to a time later than now and expresses facts or certainty. So there are three situations when the future simple tense is used. The first situation is when speaking about a simple one-time action in the future, an action that occurs one time. I will see you tomorrow. You're only gonna see her for tomorrow, not the day after. The second time is when speaking about regularly occurring repetitive actions in the future. She will take pedagogical grammar classes once a week. So this is a specific action that occurs every week, once a week. All right, and the third situation is when speaking about simple facts in the future. And it can be, if we talk about an example, it will be something like, it will be cold in December. All right, so coming toward the examples on the screen, we will eliminate gender inequality from the premises of our institute. So this is something that is said with certainty, that we sort of like, we want to eliminate gender inequality from the premises of our institute. Ahmed and his friends will participate in the upcoming political debate competition. Alright, so when we're talking about present progressive tense, it is used to talk about arrangements for events at a time later than now. So we're focusing on the arrangements here. There is a suggestion that more than one person is aware of the event and that some preparation has already happened. So we can easily understand it. It's quite simple from the examples. Tomorrow the federal government is lifting the import ban on luxury items. So before this action, there are certain arrangements that have been made for this action to take place. This semester, the students of IR department are arranging a cleanup drive around the Muscat area. So when you're actually coming up with a cleanup drive, it's not a spontaneous decision. It has some preparations involved in it, and there are certain things that you have to complete in order for this action to take place. Okay, so when we talk about simple present, it's limited to three things. You have to keep in mind these three things when you're talking about simple present simple for future use. One, it is used for fixed actions or events, like timetables or programs or schedules. And the other thing is, basically it's used in conditional sentences, the if clause or unless clause, and it's a part of the subordinate clause that sort of like depends on the main verb of the independent clause. And the third thing is basically the adverbial clauses with time conjunctions. What are time conjunctions? When, until, before, after, even. If I give you an example, it would be, even if it rains, I still might make it. So coming towards the examples that are present on the screen, my swivel arrives at 10 p.m. when we already know that these like Uber, Careem, and transportation services, they have a certain schedule that they follow, and there's a specific time involved. So you have to be present at their time if you want to sort of like take on their services. Like there's also other transportation services that are available in Karachi, like the green bus, where you sort of like, you have to wait for the ride to come, for the service to come, so you can actually hop on and go towards your destination. And the other example is, if the bank line clears up soon, I will be able to pay my semester fee. Okay, so this is basically I mean, it isn't a schedule, so what makes it a part of the simple present? I've already told you the three limits, and one of the three limits was basically the if clause, the conditionals. So you can see that at the start of the sentence there is the word if. If the bank line clears up soon, I will be able to pay my semester fee. So the present simple is basically a part of the subordinate clause, and the independent clause, the subordinate clause is sort of like dependent on the verb of the main clause. So here, so basically this is an example of present simple. Future progressive tense is used to express ongoing or continuing future actions, and there are some places where we can actually use future progressive tense, for once, we can use it to project ourselves in the future. If I want to give an example of it, it would be, yes, next week by this time I will be boarding the flight. And two, it can be used for predicting future events. When you want to predict something, it can be used for longer actions that are interrupted by shorter action, both taking place in the future. So an example for this would be, I will be studying by the time my parents arrive. So I will be studying here is the longer action that is being interrupted by a shorter action, that is the arrival of the parents. And fourth, it is describing two parallel actions simultaneously, when two actions are happening at the same time. One, for example, it would be like, I will be making biryani while my friend will be making pasta. These are two different actions that are taking place at the same time. All right, so what we have to keep in mind is that the action is basically the action continues for an expected length of time. So looking at the examples, the government will be raising the petroleum prices to fulfill the demands of IMF. So here we can see that the action is not completed. It will start and it will go on for a while. Similarly, the second example, the cattle mafia will be increasing the cattle prices this is. Yeah, this is not a completed action. It will take place in time and it will go on for a while. Alright, so the last is basically the future perfect tense. So we use future perfect tense to express an action that will be completed before another future action takes place. So it's quite easy and we can easily understand it from the example here. I will have completed my master's before you finish your bachelor's degree. So one action is completed before another action takes place. By the time the firefighters will have arrived, chase up will be history. So here in Pakistan, chase up is basically a store that sort of like caught fire, and so we have used a certain an event that actually took place in the present time, so that the students can actually understand how the tenses are basically used, keeping in mind the real life. Alright, coming towards the other section, the common ELL error section. This is where we're going to be talking about the errors that the English language learners commit when talking about the future time. Okay, so the first error is when they forget to use be, that is basically the helping verb, or to use to in a be going to sentence. So let's try to understand this error by the example. Maham going to cook biryani for eat tomorrow. As you can see in this sentence, the helping verb is missing, and if we look at the error, the sentence below it, Maham is going cook biryani for eat tomorrow. It feels like as if something is missing, because something is. The correct sentence is Maham is going to cook biryani for eat tomorrow. What language learners do is that they either omit the helping verb, or they sort of like discard they forget to use the to in a be going to sentence. Alright, so the next one is basically use be going to, not will, to talk about a future event that you have already planned. So we already have talked about plans and intentions in the be going to slide. So let's look at the example question. I need someone to help me with a YouTube video tomorrow. Can you help me? The answer is sorry, but I can't help you. I will visit Nadra for the renewal of my CNIC. So the problem here lies in will. When we're actually talking about plans or talking about intentions, we normally use the be going to form. So the correct way to actually use this sentence is, sorry, but I can't help you. I'm going to visit Nadra for the renewal of my CNIC. Alright, so let's look at the third one. There must be a clear future time established in the conversation, either by the speaker or by the previous speaker. So this is basically targeting the future progressive tense. So let's look at the example. We are having a dawat. When, where, at what time? Are you having a dawat in the morning? Are you having a dawat in the evening or at night? So the information is sort of like looks like a fragment. It's incomplete. The time is not stated, so because it doesn't state when, where, on which day. So to correct this mistake, we have to use the time marker. We are having a dawat tomorrow. Alright, so the fourth one is, do not use will or be going to in a future time clause. Use simple present tense. So the example is, as soon as the latest summer collection will hit the shelves, I will buy it. So here, as you can actually see, the problem lies with will hit. So it doesn't sound right. So the correct way to actually say it is, as soon as the latest summer collection hits the shelf, I will buy it. Alright, coming towards the fifth one, do not use future progressive tense for a short action even though it is happening in future time. So we already know that the future progressive tense targets the longer actions. So example is, if you bring your car to the university tomorrow, I will be joining you. This is an incorrect sentence. Correct one is, if you bring your car to the university tomorrow, I will join you. Alright, coming towards sixth, do not use future perfect without reference to a second future action or event. A common marker is the preposition by or the phrase by the time. Okay, so we already have talked about this, that two actions are supposed to be a part of a sentence when we're talking about the future perfect tense. So I will have gone to PG canteen for some snacks. This looks like a fragment. The information is incomplete. It feels as if there needs to be some information needs to be added in order for it to actually look complete. Okay, so the correct way to say is, by the time your lecture ends, I will have gone to PG for some snacks. So when we're talking about the future perfect tense, we have to mention two actions. Alright, so the other section, the third section of this presentation is basically the native language interference. Okay, so what I have done in this specific section is basically I have compared my language, my native language, that is basically Urdu, with English. Okay, and what I have discovered is basically the structural differences that have occurred in the sentences. Okay, so the example is, I've taken quite simple examples. I will write a letter. So basically the structure here is basically subject, verb, object. I is basically the subject, write is the verb, and letter is basically the object. But when you actually convert it into Urdu, मैं खत लिखूंगी, so the structure sort of like shifts and it becomes subject, object, verb. SOV. मैं is the subject, khat is the object, and likhungi is basically the verb. The same way I will have written a letter and I will be writing a letter. So I have written information at the end. In English, the object is at the end of the sentence, whereas in Urdu, the object comes after the subject and before the verb. Alright, so coming towards the other example that I have taken, and it sort of like targets the adverb. I will support her wholeheartedly. Here, as you can see, I is basically the subject, support is the verb, and her is the object, and wholeheartedly is basically the adverb here. And the structure goes like SVOA. But when we compare it with Urdu, मैं इसकी पूरे दिल से मदद करूँगी. The structure again shifts and it becomes like the subject, object, adverb, verb. मैं is basically the subject, इसकी is the object, पूरे दिल से is the entire adverb, and से मदद करूँगी is the verb that we're actually talking about. So The reason for taking simple examples is that it's easier to understand how English and Urdu are sort of like targeting the same sense. I mean, both the languages are talking about the same thing. In English, we're talking about the letter, and in Urdu, we're talking about the letter. But there is a difference, the structural difference that takes place. Alright, so the last section of the presentation is basically ideas for teaching verb tenses to express future time. So our suggestion would be that tenses should be taught through activities. Activity-based learning should be promoted in schools and in different educational institutions. For the reason behind this is basically when you actually teach tenses in isolation, as per the rules of the grammar translation method, where you actually pick out certain sentences and you teach them in isolation, the disadvantage of teaching tenses in such a manner is that basically students, when they're sort of like brought up, or they come into the real life, the real world, they face issues in forming sentences, and because they actually don't know how to form sentences and how to take in information, how to actually process information, because it's like you want them to use a specific jigsaw piece that you have taken out at the start of the entire puzzle, and they actually don't know how the entire puzzle looks. They just know how that specific jigsaw piece looks, and when it comes to sort of like pushing it in and making it a part of the entire puzzle piece, they panic because they're unable to actually process the entire information. And when you're actually teaching them through activities, you're actually bringing them into experience. They're engaging with other students, they're engaging with you, they're engaging with the lesson itself, so it becomes more effective. So there are certain things that you have to keep in mind when you're actually planning lessons. The age of the students is quite important. What learners are you tackling with? Are they the young learners, or are they adolescents, or are they adults? Because you cannot actually teach them the way you cannot teach adult learners the same way you teach young learners. The activity and the techniques will be different, keeping in mind the students. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is basically the nature of the activities. There are basically three types: control, guided, and free writing activities. And obviously when you're talking about the young learners, what you can do is that you can provide them with control based activities where you're actually monitoring their answers, so that it's quite good for them, because they're at the start of something, they don't know what to do, and I think it will be easy for them to actually process information. And for example, you can actually come up with drills, like chain drills, because they're quite engaging and interesting. So what the teacher can do is that the teacher can actually provide a verb to the student, or teacher can actually ask the students to give her a specific verb, and she can actually make a sentence out of it. Let's say a present simple sentence, and a student comes up with the word teach, and she can actually make a sentence targeting the present simple tense, or the future simple tense, like I will teach you. So when she has given the answer, she can, and they have sort of like practiced it for a while, like she can provide others some verbs, and when they have done it 2 or 3 times, or maybe 4 to 5 times, the other students, the last student to actually say utter the sentence, they should be given a chance to actually come up with a verb, and sort of like from their classroom point someone out, and they're going to make the sentence, and then they're going, when they have done the sentence and the sentence is correct, they can actually point towards some other student, and they can, and this is how basically the activity will rotate. And the other thing is basically you can actually give them fill in the blanks where certain verbs are missing, so that they just have to insert a specific word into the entire sentence. And the other one is basically for adolescents. What you can do is that you can give them picture based activities, and you can ask them to write down what people are doing in the picture, and you can also give them situation based activities and dialogue based activities. It depends basically on what level of students you're dealing with. And if we're talking about the future, if we're talking about future continuous, let's say we're talking about the future continuous sentence, you can actually ask them to, or you can actually give them activities focusing on certain situations like promises, excuses, and we all know how much adults love to make excuses. So you can actually bring experience into activities, and you can use it to teach them. For adults, you can use free writing activities targeting the future, para-based activities, and also dialogue-based activities. Although all the 4 sections are completed in the presentation, so I have actually here as a sample created this activity for you to understand how basically you can create activities targeting specific tenses and sort of like make the teaching interesting for the students. So this is basically a situation based activities for intermediate level students, and here what they have to do is that it's quite simple and it's easy to understand. So let's read it out and see what we have to do. Elections are just around the corner and you're running for office. So this is a specific situation that is given to the learners. All aspiring candidates make promises. So we're targeting the future continuous tense here. So we're talking about promises. You can also create activities targeting other situations, like you're talking about professions or predictions, or you're talking about excuses, stuff like that. Okay, and these promises point towards a better future. Promises might be anything from putting vending machines in the cafeteria for changing the national law. So the activity goes like, listen to the questions and make promises using the future continuous tense. So I've already stated in the activity, because you actually have to mention it, that what they have to do, so that there is no room for any confusion while they're doing it. Okay, so the before the person sort of like starts this activity, or before the teacher sort of like takes control of the activity or introduces the activity, what she has to do is that she has to select one student that is going to become a reporter and one student that is going to become a politician. So this is basically how the activity is going to take place, so that the students are engaging through different perspectives. One is a reporter, and he or she will be coming up with questions to ask the soon to be politicians. So here one is done for the kids to actually understand how they're actually going to do it. If you are elected as the next Prime Minister of Pakistan, what is the first problem you will eliminate, specifically in Karachi? So it's targeting the current conditions of the nation or of the city. Okay, so the politician will be like, I will be fastening the muggers once and for all. That is my promise. So as we all know that politicians are quite famous for making promises that sometimes are kept and sometimes they are sort of like neglected. But so this is quite an engaging activity that you can actually bring forth to the audience, and and hopefully they will learn more from it. Okay, so you can actually make other activities as well, like I've said about the excuses, where you can actually uh, for the excuses you can make a dialogue based activity similar to one like we're seeing on the screen, and you can sort of like uh, do the first one for them and then ask the students of the class to actually fill out the remaining slots where they have to make excuses to dodge, let's say, something that your friend wants to do, like will you be able to help me in completing a project, or what are your plans, or will you be joining me for dinner at a specific location, and the other person can be like, sorry, I will be taking my cat to the vet. So this will be something that the students will be more interested in doing because it's targeting their normal life, and it's fun. So that is it for the presentation, and I hope you understand how we can actually make certain activities, how we can actually how I have compared our language with English language and what we discover from that, and basically the tenses, the tenses and their rules and how they can be used. So that's it from my side, and hope you enjoyed it.